Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talking to People Who Talk to Animals. And my guest today is Mr. Connor Hill.
Hello.
We already started having a bit of a horse-annoyed conversation, so we thought we better go live and actually do it in person. But I wanted to start off actually and ask you, like, I don't know if you had pets as a kid or if you spent much time with animals, but what's your first memory of interacting with animals?
Well, I had cats, and I'm not looking at the screen because my phone just notified me that you went live. So I clicked on the notification because I was like, I'm going to share it. And then it showed up to some other thing. And then the thing was the end. So I'm just going to stop. And I had cats all my life. So interestingly enough, only as of recently and because of my horse that I have, well, who owns me now. I am learning, I actually treated people like cats, not really your best choice. um, and I kind of expected people to treat me like a cat.
Well, what do you mean by that?
Well, if you're somebody that's ever had a cat, you can't really tell a cat what to do. You can't be like, come here, cat, and it like comes. Like, I mean, maybe there's once in a blue moon a cat that is like that. I actually did have a cat that I could kiss to. I'd go, and anytime I ever did that noise, she would come, and she would be there in just a couple minutes, unless she was not feeling well. So the majority of cats, I think people know that it's like you can teach them stuff. Like you can teach them where to go to the bathroom. Like some people can even teach them to go to the toilet, but for the most part, they're gonna do what they're gonna do, and they ain't gonna listen to you.
So it sounds like you kind of have had this place of like talking to animals, whether you sort of, cognitively acknowledged it or not from a pretty young age. Do you
Yeah.
remember the first sort of experience of going, whoa, I just like talked to an animal?
Um, I would say probably um one of the most the time that sticks out the most is I had a teacher whose daughter was in the same grade, like was in my grade. So I knew her daughter, and we went over to their house one time. Like I say we because it was me and her and one of my friends, and they had a dog, like a German Shepherd, like a badass dog that like will tear people apart, and it hated everyone. Like it would go after everything and everyone. And when we were there, their whole family was blown away. Like I actually walked up to him and petted him. And I would say, like, at the time I petted him, but like, I didn't like get with him and be like, oh, hey, hey. I was just like, hello, and like just like a little bit like that. But looking back on it now, I could tell what he was okay with and what he actually desired. Like I could tell like he doesn't want me to like cuddle him. That's not his deal.
Yeah.
And I could also tell that he wasn't interested in like biting me or anything like that. And I've rarely ever had an issue. Like I've just always been able to tell kind of, I guess, where they're functioning from and like if they're having a problem with me or not. And as long as I'm paying attention.
Yeah, it seems like it's a sense that you have. And I know
Yeah.
my son Silas will like, cuddle our sausage dogs like around the neck, and, they pretty much let him do whatever because, they've been with him for many years. But,
Yeah.
like he used to go up to just any dog and do that. And one time this one dog just freaked out and, he was like grabbing it around the neck and it just went and like, gave
Bit
him a
on
nip.
the face. Yeah.
But from that moment on, he's way more like in question about, what's going on with this dog and what can I do and what can't I do. So yeah, it was interesting to
Yeah.
notice. Yeah, actually, I remember a German Shepherd when I was little. We used to have a little Shih Tzu, like Maltese, little white fluffy thing, and there was a
Yeah.
German Shepherd across the
So
road. And one day,
do you know what You know what you get when you breed a Shih Tzu with a Bulldog?
I can't, no, but I know it's going to be good.
You get a bullshit.
There we go. How do you do? What's the something like that? Yeah, you get some bullshit.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, this German Shepherd just came bounding over like from the house across the road and like basically engulfed my dog's head in its mouth and just started ragdolling it like this.
Wow.
Yeah. And I just remember I remember freaking out, and I can't remember how I think we had basically had to like pull the dogs apart and stuff. So
Wow.
it was pretty freaky, but yeah, that just popped when you started talking about German Shepherds. But so we were having a really cool conversation about the horses. And so Connor has a horse called Cinco in the ranch in Texas. And we were just talking about how he was hanging out with, Gary Douglas's horse. And they were getting on, and they're both stallions. So that was quite surprising. But we were going to talk, we were talking about like teaching horses to do things, and you were saying that you've been reading a book, and it's sort of been like you might only need 20 minutes at a time to kind of do something different with a horse. So what have you I forgot to mention, sorry, Connor is a conscious horse, conscious rider facilitator. So
5 years running now. Woohoo! Actually, almost 6.
Like it.
It'll be, no, or maybe it's either 5. No, it's it'll be 6 in January.
That's awesome. And I've had the pleasure of attending some of your classes, and they've been phenomenal. So what have you learned in with like talking to animals with these classes, and I guess it also involves people, but also from your horse. Like, what have you been learning from your horse?
From him, well, the first thing I must say that like took me a long time to learn, and I wasn't getting it until Gary actually talked about it, is that they assume you're the superior being, like unless you're a child, like like in Silas's case, they don't assume he's the superior being. They know he's like tiny little body, like
I gotta look after him.
Yeah, I'll look after him. I ain't gonna try. Like, I'm not gonna try unless the horse has been treated really terribly and trained really terribly, or if it's a wild horse, maybe they'll be like, "What the hell is that?" But like, if they've been around people, they get a sense of people, and they're like, "Oh, this little thing, it's not gonna hurt me, whatever." And they're there to actually like take care of the kid. That's one of like the biggest thing was making that switch from I kept looking towards the horses for guidance, but in reality they assume we are the superior being. Like, that's just where they function from.
They're looking to you for sort of like the leadership.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Unless they're a stallion.
which you are riding.
Yes, exactly. And if they're a stallion or an alpha mare, they're like, you need to not prove from you need to prove, but like they're like, you need to be the leader, because it's both the alpha mare and even the top mares, it's a trait of a lot of them, but the stallions and the alpha mares and even the high up mares, and I call them high up just because they don't, the way I talk about it, I get that it sounds like it's a hierarchy, but the way they live, it's not necessarily from a hierarchy from, oh, I'm cooler than you. It's a hierarchy from who's the most aware, who's got the most capacity, and they'll back down. They'll be like, oh, like that's why when I noticed with like my horse, he used to have some sort of like edge to him of like, I want to fight some other horses, and like, I want to be like big stallion on the ranch. But like I think I've been working with him and also with myself, and that's easier. And with being, I noticed not just today, but a couple days ago, last time, it was like when he was next to Gary's stallion. Gary's stallion is the alpha stout, like the lead stallion, but not from this like fighting thing, but more just like I've watched them where they go, oh, okay, you're in lead, you're in charge. But they don't do it from this thing of like, I'm going to give myself up, because really a part of the lead horse's job when they are the lead is they're constantly like doing and being what is required to make sure everybody else is more aware in the herd. Like if a horse is like not paying attention, like, hey, get aware. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I remember, I don't know if it's in one of the books but there's sort of like a story. I think it's about like Gary being out in the desert and watching the horses and talking about like the zone of awareness that they have. And if one horse, notices like a coyote or something, it's like they all will turn at the same time to watch the same thing because they're all like connected in that way. So it's someone's job to look out for everyone, but they kind of like let everyone know instantaneously with that like zone of awareness.
Yeah, and that's a great way to put it, because I sort of explained it to work for our mental brains, but really how it is for them and how you actually want to ride with the horse is that awareness of a space, like you're saying, like being aware of everything around you. That is what calms them down. And so it's like, and you can and the more you're around it, for me at least, I can sometimes notice it and sometimes I don't, but I especially notice it in the horses. At least with mine and Gary's was like, my horse was like, oh, I'm calm. Like he's got this, like Deseable has this place on watch. Like, and because it's more of a sense of like, I'll take care of you. It's not a hierarchy from I'm better than you competition. It's a hierarchy from I'll take care of you.
I got this.
Yeah. Like, not like I'll take care of you. I'll take care of you. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, no, you are the one that will take care of me. Okay. And so I don't know. I hope that does something for people out there, because it made some sense to me, but and it's been
totally.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I guess I would say for like you and your son, like, you've got to be the more aware one in that. So I imagine like for you, when you're with Silas, when it's you and him, you're like, I've got to be aware of where he is, where other things are going. I got to be aware of cars coming, like all that stuff, and like make sure he doesn't just bolt off running in some random direction, or like at least be aware of it. And so
that happened the other day. He was on his bike and I'm like, all right, you got to wait for me like at the stairs, like stop at the stairs. And he just went like a kilometer past the stairs. And I was like, okay, where the fuck is Silas?
Yeah. And so it's like, and at the same time, like, you're probably, did you know he was okay?
Yeah, to be honest, I had to go back and get the car because it was like he'd gone so far that like I couldn't see him anymore. So at one point I was like freaking out a little bit, but I did get that he was okay, but I was kind of more worried about like, other people and the road, and
where's the dad and like all the things that he's not really paying attention to.
Yeah. Which is what you're talking about, really, like being aware of, like including everything that they're aware of, but also everything that they're not aware of that, you can be aware of.
Yeah. I mean, because the thing is, like, in that situation, it's not that Cinco wouldn't just run off on his own. Like, Deseable doesn't have control over him in that manner. But Deseable is more the one of like, I'm not running anywhere, and I'm aware of everything.
Yeah.
Like you're like, I'm not going to go anywhere. Oh, where'd Silas go?
Yeah. So, are there like some ways that you have sort of noticed that the way that you work with, horses and everything have kind of influenced the way that you are like in your life and also, in working with other people and facilitating?
Everywhere,
Yeah.
everywhere, everywhere. And I used to like facilitate my classes from like, you got to learn to do this and it'll teach you this and da da da. I'm done with that. I'm not really sure how to continue facilitating my classes now, but the reality is it's like just learning to ride and be with horses will create more ease, and you'll have more ease creating anything in your life.
I love that.
Yeah.
So go and get a horse, basically, or
Yeah.
ride a horse.
Ride them and work with them. Cause I mean, you asked a brilliant question there. It's like, and how I'm dealing with people, I'm expecting far less in a short period of time. And even before working with horses, I was aware of it, but I wasn't as good at applying it. And when I say it, I mean like, if a kid doesn't walk at 3 months old, we don't get all mad and like start yelling at the kid, you need to start walking, or like, why haven't you walked yet? And we get really excited for them to take one step. And after they take one step, we don't expect them to just start running, and we don't expect them to like, walk across the room. We're like, we get it. It's a progression and you'll be all right. And same with like learning to talk, like all these things. But as adults, it's like, I'm like, hey, what do you mean you didn't upload that file? I told you to upload the file. And they're like, well, I don't know really how to do it. And then you're like, so it's kind of like, I'm probably, and I only just learned it this year with horses, was this way to ask. And you don't have to like, I've learned to ask without trying to force the horse or another person into doing what I want. Because most of the time, I mean, well, with horses, and same with people, a lot of times you have someone that really does desire to contribute to you. It's just the reason that it's not working is they don't understand what it is you're asking. So it's this and that's not always the case with people, but it's also not always the case with horses. So, I mean, I'm taking a step back, like learning to ask the question, will this horse do this? Will this horse take care of me? Will this job work for this person? So, I mean, like me asking this of this person, is that actually going to work? Yes, no. Okay. So I'm not even going to try. Rather than be like, I can't believe this person's not doing this thing I'm asking of them. But if I have someone that does, like my horse, and I kept thinking that my horse for a long time, I didn't think he was listening to me, but I just wasn't speaking his language. It's like if I was talking to someone that was Italian and they didn't speak English, and I was like, dude, go do this. And they're like, I don't even know what you're saying to me right now.
That's so cool, and that's such a great application of like talking to the animals, because I think like people, it's like everyone's got a slightly things work differently with different people when you're communicating with them, and it's the same with animals. And it doesn't mean that two horses, just because they're horses, are going to communicate the same. It's like finding the animal's language that you're actually communicating with.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah, exactly. It really is it's just beginning that communication. And because like my horse Cinco that I have now, I've been with horses that didn't listen to a thing, and I've been with horses where it was like a match made in heaven. Like everything was easy from the moment we set eyes on each other. Now that happened so early on in my horse life that I did not realize how special of a relationship that was. I was like, oh my God, this is cool. And then I just assumed I could have that with every horse, which wasn't the case. And so I've asked if I could buy that horse, and they're pretty much like no. And I've asked the horse if it wants to own me, and it's like no. But it did back then, and I missed my chance. So it wasn't well. I was like, wow, this is cool. Every horse is going to be able to do this. Not a very good question, but yeah. So it is in between all of it, and just like you said, yeah, it's like learning the language. Some of them like knowing the language right away and having no problems, and then other ones just not really having it.
Yeah. Well, I remember watching an exercise that you were doing in one of your classes in Russia, and it was an exercise with a lady, and the lady was at one end of the arena and the horse was at the other, and you were like, invite the horse to come over, and she was being a particular energy and it wasn't working, and it's like, all right, now do the exact opposite of what you're doing, and literally the moment she changed the energy, the horse just started walking over. It was like,
yeah,
you couldn't deny it, and it was such a great moment and such a great example of like, the way that, because one of the things that we talk about when communicating with animals, it's like if you say don't run, all they hear is run, and for this it's like whatever energy she was being, the horse was like, well, doesn't make sense to me. As soon as she changed it, it was like, oh, okay, you want me to come over? Sure, I'll come over.
Yeah. I mean, I'm realizing that more and more, and like more and more, because even today, like with my horse, he won't be or do everything I think, which is actually kind of nice because he won't mess up if I mess up. Like, it sounds nice to have a horse that literally will be and do everything you're asking for, but when you have a horse like that, sometimes they're so energetically in tuned to you that you've really got to be willing to be totally present with everything you're being and doing and choosing. Like Deseable, I literally just looked at him and thought, hey, can you move? I wasn't riding him or anything. He was just at the wash rack and he moved. And I was like, oh my God, that was so fast. And I didn't do it from, I am trying to get him to move. I just looked at it, thought about it. It was instant. And I looked at him. I could tell he's like, oh, you wanted me to move? And then from that moment on, he was like, where do you want me to go? And he was like, literally like looking at me like, where do you want me to move to? And I was like, whoa. Because I noticed I wasn't really paying attention to it. So it slightly confused him a little bit because I gave him an energy of, I'd like you to move. And then after that, he looked to me to how I wanted him to be. And I stopped sort of giving him any sort of direction, if you could call it that. And then he was like, what do you want?
Yeah. The sort of engagement, you were like, all right, now that's out of the way. I'm like doing something else. And
and he was still like, what do you want? And he started like moving around, getting a little discomforted. And I was like, oh, I need to like still be aware of him and be present with him on what it is I'd like him to be. And even if that's just, you're cool just the way you are. And so that's what I did. I'm like, dude, you're cool just the way you are. And he's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And that's also such a great point in talking with animals, because it's like a lot of people, I think, expect communication to be like as slow as what it is with most people, but with animals, it can be really fast.
That's such a good way to put it. As slow as most people. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's, I guess, not what everyone expects that it's going to be like, or, Cool.
And I must say, just to add to that, like, because for a long time I didn't. One of the things I wanted to talk about in us talking about all this was because somewhere for me, I created this thing where, like I had this point of view as to what, talking to them was going to be like, or riding my horse was going to be like. I had a point of view, like, kind of like when you're driving your car, or you're riding your bike, or anything that we use for locomotion these days. I'm like, I turn the wheel left, it goes left. But it's like it's like I forgot where I was going with that. Damn it. It's like, that's not what it is what it comes down to. I mean, I think it kind of can be with some horses, but it's not with your hands. It can be like more in your body and stuff. But when they're really in tune with like what you're thinking, it's just, I forgot where I was going with that. Oh, right. This is where I was going with it. It was like, I had this point of view as to what that looked like. Like I would think turn left and it would go left. And somehow we were going to be like one. We're like one person, one thinking mind. But actually what creates the most is not being one thinking mind. It's this recognition and the acknowledgement of like the difference between us. Not as far as a distance, but just not between us, but the difference that we are. Like what's different about him? What's different about me? Not even the physical stuff, but like, I don't know, maybe.
It makes sense to me, and I guess that's that unique interaction that you get with you and an animal, and it's going to be different for other people. Like, you know, like you were saying, there was this one horse that you could just get on and it would do whatever you wanted, but someone else could get on and it might, you know, be like, no, I'm not doing anything you want.
Yeah. And it was, well, and the horse that would do whatever I wanted, it wasn't like that car thing or the bicycle thing. It was more like this thing of like, I knew like he was telling me what he needed me to do. And I knew exactly what that was. And then like, so, you know, that's the big thing, hearing the other side. It's like I know we call it talk to the animals, but it's like the list before the talking starts, the listening starts.
Yeah.
And
it's hard to have a communication if you're just talking and not listening.
Don't you love that? I love sitting at restaurants when I notice like two people having dinner together and one of them talks for 45 minutes and the other one doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're like finished their meal and the other person's like hasn't even started.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, sometimes I'm like, oh my God, has that been me? Probably. Or whatever.
Cool. Well, this has been awesome, and I have to run because I've got to pick up my boy from school. But I know you're probably starting to do like conscious horse, conscious rider classes again as things open up. And where can people find you?
I would say just accessconsciousness.com/Connor Hill, or you can go to my website, connorjhill.com.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, my friend. And it's been an awesome conversation. And let's do it again soon.
And tell Silas I said hello.
I will.
All right.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thanks.